I just spent a little over a week, or I guess a little under a week, in Hong Kong, and I had not been there in quite a while. It was, I don't know, over 5 years since I was last in Hong Kong. For those of you who have not been there recently, of course, Hong Kong was pretty legendary for quite a period of time. I had a number of friends who considered it to be their favorite city in the world. And then sometime around COVID, it sort of, was not so great. There was a lot of protests, there was a lot of concern about it, et cetera. And so I was excited to be back and find out what it was like, how's it changed, what is the trajectory, is it going up, is it going down, what is going on there? And so today I'm going to talk, for those of you who haven't been there, about, is life in Hong Kong right for you? And second of all, what is the trajectory of Hong Kong and what does that likely mean? So it is a place that we very frequently form companies. As a place to have a company, it's pretty great. The banking on it is accessible, although not the most amazing in the world. There are at least quite a few options that are actually pretty okay. And so, yeah, from the standpoint of having companies, it's pretty competitive compared with most parts of the world. I would say it's one of the probably top 5 jurisdictions that one would, on average, want to form a company today, although of course every situation is unique. But today we're going to focus less on forming companies, although if you want help with that, please reach out to us. We help people with Hong Kong's company setups all the time, and if you need to do international tax planning around it, we help you with that as well. But today we're going to talk more about what life in Hong Kong is. So let's dive in and talk about those things. Before we do, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you for being here. Welcome. I am Michael. This is your first time. We're Offshore Citizen. We are some of the foremost international tax experts in the world. So we specialize in, lots of people are knowledgeable about tax in a given country, but very, very few people in the world understand what happens when you cross borders. So this is our expertise. Myself and our team help people to do really sophisticated international tax plans for themselves or their businesses. Sometimes that means you're relocating. Sometimes it means that you're staying where you are in your home country. And we help you to design that, including all the different dimensions, banking and payment processing and residence permits and asset protection and who you're selling to and where your suppliers are and where your employees are and all these sorts of things. So if you're interested in help with that, if you want to pay the lowest legal amount of tax possible, please reach out to us. You can book a call with me, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below, or send a message through offshorecitizen.net. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's talk about Hong Kong. So I really like Hong Kong. Now, let's immediately caveat, of course, Hong Kong is a big city. So if you're somebody who doesn't like big cities, you're not going to like Hong Kong. Fair enough. That's, there's a different place for every person in the world. That's one of the beauties of the world, is that it is diverse. But for people who like Hong Kong, I mean, first of all, the skyline was really beautiful. That's great. But it's got a very interesting thing, which is 70% of Hong Kong is green space. So if you haven't been there, there is like mountainous areas and people go hiking and there's forests and things that you might not expect in a major city. At the same time, I think it is a wonderful blend of Asian and Western culture, in the sense that, so for somebody like me, I don't speak Mandarin, I don't speak Cantonese, I speak English, and there's a lot of English there. So it's very easy for somebody who wants to speak English to get by in Hong Kong. Whereas by contrast, if you were to go to, frankly, even places like Shanghai, much less, right? So in mainland China, you're generally going to struggle with English. You basically need to learn Mandarin. Hong Kong, this is not the case at all. And so that's very helpful. Then it is a place that has quite a wide variety of food. So certainly you can get, huge variety of different Asian food, Chinese food. We had Indian food one night, but you can also go for Italian. You can also go for steak. You can also go for, there's like a massive variety of options in Hong Kong. And so that's pretty cool. Makes it quite attractive for people who are, again, more international. Then there is the culture. And I think it is wonderful. I really like Hong Kong culture. There's a few things I'll kind of comment on here. So first of all, historically, I had found them to be a little rude. Not in like a mean way, but in a, we're just like in a hurry kind of way. I remember one of my stays there, I was staying in a 5-star hotel, and I called down to the front desk. I said, "Hi, how are you?" And they said, "Good, what do you want?" or something like that. And it was not in a like, don't bother us. It was a, let's get to the point and get through it. And it was a little, less welcoming than what you would sometimes get. I had none of those issues this time. I was extremely well treated. Everybody was, very kind and very helpful, but also very efficient. And it's the efficiency I kind of want to speak to a little bit, because you don't get that in a lot of parts of the world. This is the type of place where, I ask for the bill is like right there. I leave my hotel room. I don't necessarily, I leave at all sorts of bizarre hours. I keep very, very odd sleep hours by many people's standards. And it didn't seem to matter when I left. Somebody was paying attention. They would come and refresh my room and things like this. So like just very on top of things. I like the efficiency of Hong Kong. There, of course, is traffic, but it's actually like relatively easy to get around. The public transit is quite good. It's interestingly walkable in a lot of areas. I was spending most of my time on Hong Kong Island, and it was pretty accessible for a lot of the areas that we were meeting with people and things like this. So that was really cool. The other side of the kind of people and the culture that I find interesting is there is, for all the complaints somebody might make about the US, there is a uniquely American entrepreneurial risk-taking dynamism in the US that is unrivaled anywhere else in the world. And I was kind of telling somebody about this recently, that, Maduro gets taken down in Venezuela, and there's like hedge fund guys on planes the next day flying into Venezuela to try and find the opportunity. This is like a very American pioneering spirit. And that's really wonderful. It's something that it has increasingly become visible to me how Europe does not have this. Europe has exactly the opposite. It is extremely risk averse, greatly to their detriment. However, I think that if you were to say like, okay, if the US is sort of the epicenter of that, where is second place? I think you would probably say Hong Kong. Hong Kong has a very nice blend. I think it's, sort of connected enough to China, but sort of not quite in China. People are willing to do things, willing to get things done. It's a different culture in that regard. And so you've got that. Then you've got, a lot of flavors of kind of Asian culture that I think are great, but it's not like too Asian, right? So if you're in Philippines, or you're in Indonesia, or you're in Cambodia, or you're in Vietnam or Thailand or something like that, I mean, it's like very Asian. I took my mother, was it a year or two ago, to Asia for the first time. And we started in Singapore, and she's, remarking on this. I'm like, this is not real Asia, We go from there to Vietnam and then to Philippines. Okay, now you like experience what proper Asia is like. So Hong Kong has a bit of grit to it. I sometimes liken it to the Asian version of Manhattan, but it's also got, enough polish on it. So, so if you're in Bangkok, it's often very stinky. You don't really have nearly so much of that in Hong Kong. There is a bunch of these countries where there's a lot of friction in terms of like you have to negotiate over everything. And you can't kind of trust what somebody's recommendation is, because if you ask the taxi driver, where should I go to a tailor? They're going to take you somewhere where they're getting paid. It's not, Hong Kong is, I think, like much more to the point, much more, I want to call it authentic, but anyway, authentic is the wrong word, of course. It's way, way better in this regard. And that's, I think, like super refreshing. I think they have a very, very nice balance in these regards. Now, some people will say, what about the cost of real estate? And yes, historically, Hong Kong has like the second most expensive real estate in the world after Monaco. It's absurdly expensive. They we're in a situation where there's just no large places. So I tend to like large places. I come from Canada. This is like, we're used to large places. And so you just don't get that in Hong Kong in general. This being said, from clients who live in Hong Kong, and I apologize to any of you who I didn't get to meet with while I was there, but they will tell me that actually the rents are like somewhat reasonable now. It's not totally absurd. And so that's also something to pay attention to. We're like, okay, this is cool. This is interesting. So that's great. In terms of the kind of dynamics that have changed, I think it's quite interesting that the kind of universal comment was, it used to be that people would come from Shenzhen to Hong Kong in order to have fun and things like this. Now they go from Hong Kong to Shenzhen. Shenzhen is, alive, and the costs are low, and it's more modern, and there's more things to do, et cetera. And so that's quite interesting. I have been told by some people in Hong Kong that they think that's kind of a good thing. It sort of takes some of the pressure off of Hong Kong. So that's cool. Then in general, I found quite a lot of optimism. So We went and toured Alibaba's stuff. We went and tried to meet with lots of different people in business and investing and things like this. And in general, there was a sentiment of optimism and positivity. I think they had 400 IPOs last year on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, was what they told us at Alibaba. So more than anywhere in the world, it's like there's just things are quite alive and improving in this regard. And I thought that's a great sign. Very, very nice. So quite positive. Now, of course, no place has everything. Every place has trade-offs. Absolutely, this is true. And so one should obviously not believe that there's a perfect place. I've never found a perfect place. I've been to lots of parts of the world, lots of the places that would be considered the top places in the world. I've never found the perfect place. I don't think, unless you have a very specific thing that you love. My wife's father will probably tell me that Montenegro is the best. But aside from those sorts of things, there's always trade-offs, right? Always, always, always trade-offs. Some of the things that were a little annoying. So ChatGPT and Gemini both did not work natively in Hong Kong. You could use a VPN, and so you could access them. So it wasn't the end of the world. Interestingly, that's actually not a restriction from Hong Kong. One might think, oh, it's part of the Great Firewall. No, you're not behind the Great Firewall in Hong Kong. And it was not a problem from there. It's that OpenAI and Google don't want to offer services there. So Grok actually does work and does offer services there. So that was kind of an interesting experience. I would say there's pretty good connectivity in terms of internet speeds, and infrastructure tends to work really well there. The weather, it's an okay weather, I would say. So it depends a little bit on what you like in terms of climate. It was perfectly reasonable wearing a jacket while I was there. So this is, February. It maybe was a little bit cold for people who like it to be warm. But on the other hand, it's, not insanely humid all year round like you will get in some of the parts of Southeast Asia that are kind of near the equator, and really too kind of unbearable for people. Now, during the summers, of course, it's very humid. And so that is a little bit of a trade-off. They do have typhoons that come through there. There's been some interesting videos of kind of flooding inside storefronts, et cetera. So that can happen. None of that was going on when I was there. It's not quite the right season, but it is something to consider if you are going to be there. Residency there, I'll do another video talking specifically about residency options. It's not the easiest. It's not terrible, but it's not the easiest to get there. I've talked before about how the tax system there is really quite excellent. I mean, there's no tax on capital gains. There's a single imputation system, which means that if the company was taxed, then the dividends aren't taxed to the individual. For the first 300,000, they are 8.25%. And then after that, it goes up to 16.5%, which is, not absurd, right? I think a lot of people that I have known over the years, of course, I've been doing this sort of thing for over 10 years. And generally speaking, what I'll hear from people, say, coming from Western countries, is they're okay, I live in a place, I understand, I want to contribute to there, that's fine. If I'm paying 15%, that seems kind of fair. If it's 50%, that sounds too high. And so, you're basically in that particular range. So not particularly problematic at all. They allow absurd amounts of write-offs, things that probably should not be allowed. Normally in most countries that would be considered, a taxable benefit, et cetera. You can get away with in Hong Kong, so there's that. The compliance on companies is, in theory, higher than in a bunch of places because they require annual audits. But in practice, because they're so efficient there, it's not really so bad. It's, I would say, not so different from a lot of Western countries in this regard. And just the overall system is more business friendly, makes things easier, et cetera. So yeah, overall, highly recommend Hong Kong. It is a place that I think is probably underappreciated today. We've obviously gone through these series of points when, it was changing over from British rule to Chinese rule, and then some of the changes that were taking place under Chinese rule, et cetera, kind of have had people exit. But in reality, I think it is still one of the great cities in the world, and certainly offers a lot. It's the place to passport into China. There's a bunch of reasons why accessing those markets, accessing the people who are involved in that part of the world are really not accessible in the same way anywhere else. And it remains one of the most business-friendly places on earth. Recognizing that, you're not going to build a huge team there. It's not, wages are going to be too high, cost of living is too high, there's lack of space, there's these sorts of things that are trade-offs. So for the most part, you're going to be somewhat limited in terms of the footprint you would want actually in Hong Kong. But as a place to base yourself and or base your company, that's a big deal. Also, if you're talking about basing companies there and you're not based there, there's something called the operations. It's a territorial tax system, so that's also very helpful. And part of that territoriality is they have something called the operations test for companies. I've talked about this in some previous videos. And what that means is potentially that company can be zero tax in Hong Kong. So a few things have to be true. Again, you can feel free to reach out to us if you're interested in the nuances of that and whether one of those company setups is good for you. But I would highly recommend checking it out and see if it is something that fits your particular scenario. Let me know if you have questions, put them in the comments below, and I will look forward to seeing you on the next video.